The Zervok dominion had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Their conquests were legendary, one world after another falling under their control. They were a race of towering, six-limbed warriors, possessing technology far beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. Their armadas darkened the skies of entire star systems, and their empire had come to rule over 1,000 species. Every species they encountered had either submitted or been wiped out. Their supremacy was undisputed until they met the Resolute. The Resolute was an aging human warship, a relic from a time when humanity was still struggling to unify its fractured colonies. It was small by intergalactic standards, nothing more than a single battleship equipped with outdated weapons and worn-down shields. The ship had been part of a distant patrol fleet, sent to the outskirts of human-controlled space to watch over quiet, backwater systems. Nobody expected it to encounter anything more dangerous than an asteroid field. But then the Zervok came. When the Zervok fleet entered the system, they did not send a warning, they did not issue an ultimatum. They arrived with overwhelming force, their ships blotting out the stars, their weapon systems humming with deadly energy. The inhabitants of the human colony planet knew they had no chance. The Zervok had decimated far more advanced worlds with ease. Humanity's defense grid was laughably underpowered compared to Zervok technology. And yet, the Resolute refused to run. On board the ship, Captain Elena Torres stood at the command center. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the incoming armada. Her crew, hardened veterans and young recruits alike, looked to her for guidance. Fear lingered in the air, but beneath it, there was a quiet determination. They had all seen the devastation the Zervok had wrought on other species, heard the stories of worlds reduced to dust. "They'll expect us to run," Torres said, her voice calm. "They'll expect us to surrender, but we won't give them the satisfaction." Her words echoed through the bridge, igniting a spark of defiance in her crew. They knew they were outmatched. The Zervok ships were titans compared to their lone warship, their shields impervious to almost any known weaponry. But humanity had always thrived on ingenuity, and Captain Torres had no intention of going down without a fight. The first Zervok assault wave arrived in a flash of light, unleashing torrents of plasma fire at the Resolute. The ship shuddered under the barrage, its shields barely holding. But Torres had prepared for this. Instead of engaging directly, she ordered her ship to dive into a nearby asteroid field, using the debris to mask their movements. The Zervok, arrogant in their technological superiority, didn't bother pursuing with caution. They surged forward, confident in their numbers. That was their first mistake. Captain Torres had her ship lay down mines as they whipped through the asteroids, each one designed to detonate in an electromagnetic pulse. The Zervok ships, unaccustomed to such primitive tactics, were caught off guard. Several of their smaller vessels were crippled by the mines, their systems fried by the pulses, but even that wouldn't be enough to turn the tide of battle. The Zervok fleet still vastly outnumbered the Resolute. Torres knew that, too. She wasn't aiming for victory, just survival. The second wave came more cautiously. Zervok vessels sprang out to flank the human warship, but this time, Torres had a plan they wouldn't expect. With the flick of a switch, she activated the ship's jump drive to escape, but to make a short-range tactical jump directly into the heart of the Zervok fleet. It was a suicide maneuver by most standards. The Resolute blinked out of existence for a moment, only to reappear amidst the Zervok capital ships, which had left themselves exposed, never expecting the human ship to take such an audacious risk. As soon as they rematerialized, the Resolute opened fire with every weapon it had. Explosions rippled across the Zervok ships as the Resolute launched its entire payload in a matter of seconds. Their targeting systems were overwhelmed, and for a brief moment, the mighty Zervok fleet was in disarray. But the Zervok recovered quickly. Their flagship, a monstrous dreadnought, loomed over the human warship, its main cannon charging for a single, devastating strike. Torres didn't flinch. Instead, she gave a final command: activate the failsafe. Deep within the Resolute, a hidden device powered up a prototype weapon that had never been tested in live combat. The quantum destabilizer, a last-ditch creation of humanity's best scientists. designed to destabilize the fabric of space-time in a localized area. It was meant to be a weapon of deterrence, but now it was their only chance. The device fired. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, space itself seemed to twist and contort around the Zervac fleet. Ships began to tear apart as gravity and time warped unpredictably. The Zervac flagship disintegrated in an instant, its once indestructible hull crumpling like paper. The entire fleet was thrown into chaos, their systems failing, their ships turning to debris as the laws of physics unraveled. When the weapon finally ceased, the Zervac armada was no more. Only the Resolute remained, floating in the void, battered but intact. Captain Torres exhaled slowly, her body sagging with exhaustion. The crew erupted into cheers, their disbelief mixing with triumph. They had done the impossible against all odds. A single human warship had defeated the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known. The news of the Zervac defeat spread across the stars, shocking every species that had once cowered in fear of the Dominion. The Zervac had been humbled, their fleet shattered, their reputation forever tarnished. And as for humanity, they had proven something the galaxy would never forget, that even the mightiest empires could be brought to their knees by those who refused to surrender. News of the Zervac's defeat at the hands of the Resolute spread faster than the light of dying stars. The message was clear: the invincible Zervac Dominion, conquerors of worlds, had been humbled by a single human warship. It was a tale told in hushed tones and fiery speeches, inspiring hope among oppressed civilizations and sending shockwaves through the power structures of the galaxy. But while many celebrated, others prepared for what would come next. Captain Elena Torres Saturday alone in her quarters aboard the Resolute. The ship's repairs were underway, though they would never truly restore it to its former glory. The quantum destabilizer had drained the ship's energy reserves, and their weapons were spent, but it wasn't the state of her ship that troubled Torres, it was the silence. The Zervac weren't known for retreating. If they had truly been defeated, there should have been some sign of their response by now, either retaliation or negotiations, but there was nothing. And that terrified her. A chime broke the silence, and Torres sighed as she leaned back in her chair. "Come in." The door slid open, revealing Lieutenant Kaito, her second-in-command. His face was pale, his usual calm replaced by deep worry. "Captain, you need to see this." She followed him to the bridge, her instincts on high alert. The crew was gathered around the central holomap, their expressions grim. Torres stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the map. "What am I looking at?" she asked. Kaito pointed to a distant star system, far from their current location. It was a Zervac stronghold, one of their core systems that had never fallen to any enemy, but the data coming in was wrong. "It's gone," Kaito said quietly. "The entire system, no energy signatures, no communications, it's like it just vanished." Torres' stomach tightened. How is that possible? The Zervac have fortifications there, weapons we've never even seen. "We don't know," Kaito replied, "but it's not just that system. We've picked up reports from other sectors. It's happening across the Zervac territories, whole fleets and outposts just disappearing. No battles, no wreckage, nothing." A chill ran down her spine. "You think this is connected to what happened with the quantum destabilizer?" Kaito hesitated. "It's possible. Whatever we unleashed, it could have done more damage than we realized. We destabilized space-time around their fleet. Maybe it triggered something else, something bigger." Torres frowned, her mind racing. The quantum destabilizer had been a weapon of last resort, a prototype created in desperation. But if its effects were spreading beyond the battlefield, what had they unleashed? "Captain," another officer spoke up, drawing her attention to the communications console. "We're receiving a signal." "From where?" The officer swallowed nervously. "Zervac space." Torres' eyes widened. "Put it through." The bridge fell silent as the transmission crackled to life. At first, there was only static, but slowly, a voice emerged. It was deep and distorted, speaking in a language that none of them recognized. But then, Something unexpected happened. Voice shifted, as if calibrating itself, and began to speak in perfect standard galactic. Humans, the voice intoned, you have unleashed a force beyond your comprehension. Torres' heart skipped a beat. This is Captain Elena Torres of the Resolute. Identify yourself. There was a long pause, and then the voice replied, I am High Imperator Thalak of the Zervok Dominion, or what remains of it. The crew exchanged glances. The High Imperator himself, the leader of the entire Zervok Empire, was contacting them. This was unprecedented. What do you mean what remains of it? Torres asked, her voice steady. Thalak's voice was strained, filled with a rare note of desperation. Your weapon has disrupted the fabric of reality itself. Our fleets, our worlds here are unraveling. We are being erased from existence. Torres felt the weight of his words settle heavily on her. The Zervokons, the greatest military power in the galaxy, were being torn apart not by battle, but by something far more insidious, something they had unknowingly unleashed. We didn't know, Torres said, though the words felt hollow. The destabilizer was a weapon of last resort. We didn't realize. You didn't realize you were tampering with forces beyond your understanding, Thalak interrupted, his voice sharp. And now, the consequences will be felt by all. Torres gripped the edge of the console, her mind racing for a solution. There must be a way to stop it. If this is connected to the destabilizer, maybe we can reverse the effects. You misunderstand, human, Thalak replied darkly. This is no longer confined to the Zervok. The disruption is spreading. Soon, it will reach other systems, your systems, and when it does, nothing will survive. The bridge was silent, the crew frozen in shock. Torres forced herself to focus. If you're contacting us, then you believe there is still a chance. What do we need to do? There was a pause before Thalak responded. We need to repair the breach. The weapon you used has torn a hole in the fabric of space-time. The more it spreads, the greater the collapse. But to fix it, we need to return to the origin point. The battlefield, Kaito murmured, where we used the destabilizer. Torres nodded, her mind already calculating the risks. What do you need from us? You must escort our remaining ships to the breach, Thalak said. Together, we can't stabilize it. But know this, if we fail, there will be no galaxy left to save. Torres didn't hesitate. Understood. We'll rendezvous with your forces. As the transmission ended, Torres turned to her crew. Prepare the ship for immediate departure. We're heading back to the battlefield. Kaito stepped forward, his expression filled with uncertainty. Captain, are we really going to trust the Zervok? Torres met his gaze, her resolve unshaken. We don't have a choice. If we don't fix this, the entire galaxy could be wiped out. We'll work with Thin for now. As the Resolute powered up its engines and set course for the origin of the breach, Torres couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Zervok might have been defeated, but the real threat was something far greater, something that could end not just empires, but reality itself. The Resolute cut through space like a phantom, its hull still scarred from the battle that had turned the tide of the galaxy. Captain Elena Torres stood on the bridge, staring at the view screen as stars streaked by. They were heading back to the site where they had deployed the quantum destabilizer back to the origin of the breach. The weight of the mission pressed heavily on her. The Zervok were no longer the enemy, or reluctant allies. Their High Imperator, Thalak, had made it clear. The rift in space-time was expanding, consuming their empire first but threatening all life in the galaxy. It was an enemy none of them could fight with weapons. Captain, Lieutenant Kaito said from his station, we're nearing the rendezvous point, picking up Zervok's signals ahead. Torres nodded. Bring us out of warp. Let's see what we're dealing with. The Resolute decelerated, and the view screen flickered as the stars slowed to their normal state. In the distance, Zervok ships materialized, but was left of them. The once mighty armada, which had blackened the sky with its sheer numbers, was now reduced to a few scattered vessels. Their sleek, predatory designs were marred by damage, their once imposing presence diminished by desperation. As the human warship approached, a transmission came through. This is High Imperator Thalak. We are prepared to initiate the stabilization protocols. His voice was hard, but there was a crack in it, an acknowledgement of vulnerability that Torres had never expected from a Zervac leader. Understood, High Imperator, Torres responded. We're ready on our end. What's the plan? Thalak's image appeared on the main screen, his face as stern and alien as ever, but his eyes reflected a weariness that spoke of words lost. The breach must be closed. Using a synchronized burst of energy from both our ships, we would channel what remains of our power cores into the epicenter of the disturbance, but it will require precise coordination. One mistake, and the collapse could accelerate. Torres felt the tension rise among her crew. They had never worked with the Zervac before, and the idea of placing their fate in the hands of a former enemy was enough to make anyone uneasy. Still, there was no room for doubt now. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Understood, Torres said. We'll follow your lead. As the two fleets aligned, the view screen shifted to show the heart of the battlefield, where the Zervac armada had once been obliterated. The space around them shimmered, as if reality itself was unstable, warping and bending in unpredictable ways. In the distance, a swirling tear in space-time pulsed with an unnatural light wound in the fabric of the universe. The breach. Kaito studied the readings at his station, his brow furrowing. Captain, the breach is fluctuating. It's growing faster than we anticipated. We may not have much time. Torres clenched her fists. All right, let's move. Activate the stabilizers and prepare to channel our energy. The crew worked in silent concentration, their hands flying over their consoles as they brought the ship's systems online. The Resolute hummed with power, its engines straining as the last of its reserves were rerouted toward the breach. Thalak's voice came through once more. We are initiating our part of the process. On my mark, release your energy pulse in perfect synchronization. We have one shot at this, Captain. Torres nodded to her crew. Stand by. Everyone ready. A murmur of affirmation echoed through the bridge. Torres locked eyes with Kaito, who gave her a firm nod. Despite the odds, they had survived so much together, Oretino. They were about to face the greatest challenge yet. 3, 2, 1. Now, Thalak commanded. Torres slammed her hand down on the console, releasing the energy pulse from the Resolute. The ship shook violently as the energy surged forward, merging with the Zervac's pulse in a blinding arc of light. The two forces met at the epicenter of the breach, and for a moment, it seemed to work. Breach began to stabilize, its edges pulling inward as the energy flowed into it. But then something went wrong. An alarm blared across the bridge. Captain, Kaito shouted, the breach is destabilizing again. It's pulling in too much energy. It's going to overload. Torres' heart pounded. Shut it down. Pull back. But it was too late. The breach exploded outward, a shockwave of distorted reality ripping through the space around them. The Resolute was thrown off course, systems failing as the ship spun wildly. The Zervac ships were caught in the same wave, their vessels spiraling into the chaotic void.